The Sopranos follows New Jersey mob boss Tony Soprano, husband and father of two. Over the course of the show's 6 seasons, Tony must juggle his responsibilities as head of his family and the head of the family. His therapy sessions with Dr Melfi add insight into his psyche, character and intentions, as we learn more and more what he is about, what he thinks, how he reacts to the situations and people around him. Though he does have his moments and does make attempts to better himself and gain a level of reflection and introspection, Tony is ultimately not a nice guy. In fact, he subtly gets worse over the course of the show, until season 6, where he seemingly is content with being a toxic person, diving deep into vices, breaking bonds, committing taboos, and fully enjoying himself while he does it. Tony is ultimately a self-absorbed narcissist whose actions are fueled by self-interest. He revels in having his fill, and the next person's too, destroying others as he does himself. He starts to see others not as people but as tools, and values them based on how much use they are to him. Sometimes his behavior is driven by pure selfishness and a complete lack of empathy, such as when he gambles away money he was originally going to give to Vito Jr.'s mother. Other times, it is pure cruelty intended to cause pain, like many of the things he says to Carmela when they split up. And if it isn't bad enough that his behavior and empathy nosedives throughout the show, he drags others with him, such as making Bobby Bacala, who has never killed anyone, carry out a hit and in the process lose his soul. A series of events which were no doubt influenced by Bobby beating Tony in the fight and the latter feeling insecure about it. He preys on those weaker than him, like ruining Davy Scatiano's life or constantly beating Georgie up. Today, I wanted to take a look at some of the most evil and cruelest things Tony Soprano has ever said. I want to separate the things he says from the things he does, as the latter is something we can take a look at in another video. Obviously, separating Tony's words and actions is not easy, as talking is still doing something, but I'm going to try my best to stick to the things Tony says that are cruel exclusively, and leave out his evil actions, such as killing Christopher. It's not easy, and with a few of these I'm probably breaking the rule. So anyway, let's take a look, and be sure to let me know in the comments below what lines you think are some of Tony's worst. And while you're at it, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with future videos. The first line I want to nominate, and this is in no particular order by the way, is when AJ spills food on the floor and Tony starts berating him. AJ is stiff and looks uncomfortable, unlike in later seasons where he constantly brushes off criticism from his parents and is absolutely insufferable. So it might be best for Tony to have a few words and move on. But he then looks at Carmela and says, "I'm supposed to get a vasectomy when this is my male heir? Look at him." I mean, this one needs no explanation, surely. It is one of the cruelest things uttered in the entire show. There is probably no greater example in The Sopranos of a way to put down a character, to demoralize him, to strip him of both his manhood and his status as the only son. How is that supposed to make you feel if you're AJ? That you're not good enough? That you're so weak and such a disappointment that your father is holding out on hope that he'll have another son who is better than you? And sure, AJ can be a fool, but at this point he's around 15 and has a sociopathic father. Many of AJ's failings are actually Tony's. As I argued in another video, with parents like AJ's, what chance did the boy actually have? And the lack of reaction from AJ, in spite of his mother's insistence that Tony apologizes, is telling. Sure, maybe he doesn't even know what a vasectomy is, but if he does, his non-reaction implies Tony's insult is pretty much what he's been led to believe his entire life, that he's utterly useless and without value. It's so mean-spirited and merciless to say something like that to your son. I mean, even if it was true, some things are just best left unsaid. On to my next pick, and it's when Tony is having dinner with Janice, Bobby and their family. Throughout this episode, Tony can see that Janice, who is one of the most toxic people in the show, is doing therapy and it's clearly having an effect. She's calmer, happier, she's doing well with her new family. Both Tony and Janice have issues, especially since they had Livia for a mother, but here Janice is actually trying to change and she's having success. And Tony's reaction? Well, he just can't take it. Can't take it that Janice is happy, and he tries to bring her down to his level by bringing up her estranged son, saying, "I wonder where Harpo is eating his Sunday dinner." And when Janice is able, albeit struggling, to keep her cool, he digs his heels further, saying, I wonder what's French Canadian for I grew up without a mother, and Sacre bleu, where's me mama? Citing him as the boy's uncle as his reason for doing so. But his shit-eating grin as he walks out of the home says everything. He can't stand to see Janice happy and in control of herself. It's one of Tony's most petty moments, one where it's most obvious where he is just a miserable person who spreads his misery and can't let anyone be happy, much like his mother. Janice had even apologized to Tony earlier for her behavior, talked up how her therapy helped her become happy, and instead of being happy for his sister, he rips away all the progress she's made. He's only happy when he finally makes her unhappy. I will say one thing though in Tony's favor here. In a way, Tony is calling Janice out on her phoniness and bullshit that she is cured and a changed person, showing how easy it is for her to slip into her old ways with just a few words. And it's still narcissistic and selfish for Janice to only consider herself and be happy that her happiness is improving, when she's left an avalanche of destruction in her journey. As Tony points out, she may be happy and jolly with her new family, but there is still a son out there who Janice abandoned, and she hasn't righted that wrong, instead doing the easy thing and ignoring it. But in any case, Tony's comments aren't coming from a place of sincerity and caring about his nephew, regardless if the point he made was valid. It was cruel, unnecessary, and completely calculated. Janice should have brought up his small hands and he would have gone crying all the way back to Melfi. For my next pick, I'm going for Tony's line to Melfi when he says, "We're soldiers. Soldiers don't go to hell." So what's so evil about that? Well, it's the fact that he justifies his behavior and everything he and the mob do with this line. The fact that it's dripping with narcissism and shows he does not take any accountability. And he follows it up by berating Melfi for taking a stand and says she told him all this time she's been saying nothing is his fault because of poor parenting, and now he's angry, insecure and lashing out because she calls him out, saying what does poor Italian immigrants have to do with him? He can't take it and would rather live in this bubble where what he is doing is for the betterment of his people. He goes on about codes and orders, talking about preserving things that mean something to the Italians. He uses words like honor, loyalty, and family. And it's sickening. It's scary that someone can delude themselves into thinking this. Someone should make a supercut of Tony saying, "We're soldiers," and follow it up with Paulie killing an old lady, Tony killing his nephew, the bust out with Davey, getting the cop demoted, crying about a horse, hijacking trucks carrying TVs, and all of the other Sopranos shenanigans. But there are people like this, people who commit heinous actions and feel fully justified, and it is pure evil. So for my next pick, I'm going for a line said in a fight between Tony and Carmela. It's really more the overall mood and attitude of Tony, but it's best summarized when he screams at Carm. "Fact is, you're a shitty businesswoman who built a piece of shit house that's gonna cave in and kill that unborn baby any day, and now you can't sleep." He follows this up with, bearing in mind Carmela has been forward-thinking and wanting to plan in case Tony is arrested or killed. He says, "When I'm gone, you can live in a fucking dumpster for all I care." And you have to bear in mind, one of the reasons he's so pissed is just because he couldn't bet more heavily on a football game he won, and is just lashing out, being cruel for the sake of it. And his demeanor isn't really scary, like it has been in previous shouting matches. It's intimidating, sure, but it comes off as deranged, desperate, and a far cry from how in control a lot of Tony Soprano verbal beatdowns are. And the line about living in a dumpster, damn. The whole point of making money as head of the household is to take care of your wife and kids. And here Tony is just openly saying he does not care what happens to Carmela after he's gone. That's deplorable. For my next pick, I'm sure a lot of people will think this isn't particularly evil or cruel, and maybe in the grand scheme of things it isn't, because it is somewhat justified. But when Tony and Pussy kill the Bevilacqua kid, who shot Chris and put him in hospital, they have a few words with him before they take him out. The guy's been beaten up, he's scared out of his wits, he's given a Diet Coke. Tony asks if he likes it, whether he would rather have something with sugar in it. There is a pause. And then Tony says, "'Cause that sugarless motherfucker is the last fucking drink you're ever gonna have." And then he gets up and shoots Matt, all the while his victim cries in despair. I mean, Matt practically tried to murder someone who was as close to Tony as his son, so Tony's anger is completely justified. But Tony is absolutely reveling in this situation. He knows from the off he's going to kill the kid, but he savors it. He gives him this false hope. He intentionally acts kind to Matt so that the payoff of dropping the sugarless motherfucker line is all the more sweeter to satisfy his vengeful cruelty. Pussy could have popped him in the back of the head when he went to get the drink, but Tony would rather bask in the kid's terror to appease his sadism. For my next choice, I'm going with something that's not ostensibly too bad, and it probably highlights Tony's ignorance and lack of thinking more than his cruelty. But when he visits Janice's place and finds Richie April instead, Tony goes on about why Richie would want Janice. For someone as hot-tempered as Richie, he keeps his cool with Tony's remarks and handles things well, all things considered. I mean, after all, Tony is berating his girlfriend here. The line I've gone for is, "There are men in the can better looking than my sister." So yeah, it's a zinger, but think of the implications. Richie has gone away for a long time. He's been in the can 10 years, not a peep, and things happen in jail. Satanic black magic, sick shit. But you get a pass for that. But it's strongly implied Richie indulged in such activities, like when he wants the lights off when he's visited by the girls after getting out. So putting all this into context, it's pretty insulting for Tony to come out with something like this. He's basically verbally acknowledging the secret things some men do who have long sentences. He's saying Richie did it, and he's essentially saying he's better off doing that than dating his sister. He could have just said, "There are men better looking than my sister," but he specifically mentions prison, whether it was intentional or not, and that has heavy implications. And with Richie's demeanor change, it seems he picked up on it. So let's do one more, as this video is getting quite long. When Adriana spills the beans to Chris about the feds, as we know, he leaves and she gets a call from Tony saying Chris had a heart attack and she'll be picked up to go to the hospital. Obviously she's being set up here and the entire phone conversation is a cruel act. But Tony goes even further than necessary by saying, "Did Chrissy tell you something? Anything?" Knowing that Adriana told Chris about the FBI. I mean, it's bad enough that she's going to be murdered. It's bad enough that she thinks her boyfriend is in hospital, but Tony slyly makes her think it was her fault that Chris had an attack, piling even more anxiety and guilt on her. Plus, it's a shockingly adept display of a cunning lie in which he mitigates this emotionally charged series of events to feign ignorance and just sell the lie that much more. He's known this girl for years, and just like that, he effortlessly sets her up for murder. So what do you think are Tony's most evil and cruel lines? What do you think of my choices? Do you think there's any ones I've missed? Let me know in the comments below. And before we finish, I just want to thank my patrons, Andre Millington, Dirk K and Nicholas Curtis. And also my channel members, the new Ongoam24, Rikers and Michael Awatwi. Thanks for watching.